This is a video for educational purposes only. I'm not here to diagnose anyone with anything or stuff like that. And getting into the video. Okay. Do you want to know what a demonic possession looks like? Before you click off, this is important. All right, this is really important because this is talking about mental health. Look at the people around you who have lost their mind. When I say lost their mind, I mean like genuinely loose screws. They have lost who they are. They don't know who they are. They lost their self-integrity. When you lose your self-integrity, when you don't know who you are anymore at your core, you have drifted so far away from yourself, that is when demonic possession takes place. And what does that look like? I'm going to get into that in a moment. And I have a little graph to show. To describe and explain this graph here, this is the self-integrity threshold graph, okay? So this is the baseline. Like, we started at 0. Ignore this 0, all right? That I'll get into later. But this is your like baseline. That's your baseline. And so we have low vibration, medium, high. Eventually you get to like a new baseline where you energetically clear your karma. This is all like karma and stuff, whatever, trauma, yeah. I explained that in my previous video before. But talking about this, because this is where you enter negative frequency. Like, you enter a point of nearly no return. I say near, okay? I'm knocking on wood because of personal reasons. This video was inspired by something. I'll get into that later. But when you enter, like, below your self-integrity threshold, like of yourself, you enter a negative frequency, and that leads you to demonic possession. To compare this acts like a blackout, like spiritual blackout, like lack of consciousness of self. Imagine when you're drunk. You know, when you drink so much and you black out, you end up blacking out, you don't have no memory of yourself, you don't have any memory of doing X, Y, and Z. That's because, well, first of all, alcohol literally, it's called spirits for a reason. It lowers your vibration enough where when you hit blackout point with alcohol, you lose consciousness, you leave yourself vulnerable for attack. This is the same thing. You leave yourself vulnerable for attack where a low vibrational demon entity being thing can take over your body. You're no longer present. You're no longer present within yourself. Sometimes I could jumble my words. Please bear with me. But this is really important to note and mention because you don't have to be blackout drunk to lose yourself, to be vulnerable to demonic attack, to demonic possession, to spiritual whatever, okay? Another way that you could reach that blackout point is when you literally lose who you are at your core. And that happens when you bottle up your emotions, when you lose touch of who you are, because society teaches you it's not okay to feel, it's not okay to be yourself, it's not okay to X, Y, and Z, you know? And so with this, you now have an issue where you become dysregulated and stressed and all of that. You become worrisome, and eventually you will spiral and lose yourself. You will get lost in the chaos. And stress-induced schizophrenia is a thing, by the way, not to scare anyone. But this video was inspired because one of my family members is going through this, and I was thinking of a scenario. Like, I'm not gonna get into that. But because there is an issue, a systemic issue in society with this, you become the product and consumer. You become a product of the environment, and you become a product to companies to make medications to mask these symptoms, to get you somewhat to a normal state again, somewhat normal to your state again, to your self-integrity threshold, but it's not going to help you get back to your threshold it's only gonna mask. Like, you're gonna stay in that state and you're gonna rely on those medications. And then you're gonna become the consumer taking those medications. They're gonna sell you these things. You know, they're gonna sell you the medications. And psych wards don't help. Like I said, they only mask your symptoms. What they really should do is help build habitual habits, habitual rituals to meet yourself where you are. You know, I'm looking at my notes what I wrote, so excuse me. Yeah, to meet yourself where you are mentally and emotionally, because emotions don't define who you are. They only reflect where you are and where you stand with yourself as a current right now, you know, in the present. All right, so that's all I have for my notes. Everything else, yeah, so self-integrity really matters, because without your self-integrity, again, you're gonna go batshit crazy. What does self-integrity mean? Like, your wholeness, your beliefs, your individuality. And when those go out the window, you have a void, you have a space within yourself that could be taken over by something else, you know? And that's when these physical, like, mental illnesses come into play. And yes, I want to note and disclaimer, like, mental illnesses can be genetic, and you could have a history of that. For example, like, my family has a history. That is what inspired me to make this video. It's difficult seeing that happen in real time, you know, especially when you warn. I warned this family member, like, what to do to protect themselves, and they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't heed my warning, and here we are. So it's sad. It's really sad. And it's really important to ground yourself. But to combat demonic possession, to combat this, mind you, my family has a history, because there's a history of family dysfunction where we would be conditioned to not be in tune with ourselves, to ignore ourselves, to ignore what we want, steering away from integrity, you know, yourself, and obey. Like, pretty much obey, listen, follow, work hard. And a lot of my family would go crazy because of that. They lost themselves. So I know what I'm talking about. If there's a history of mental illness in your family, look at the dynamic, look at the dysfunction, and if there's any there, you know, chances are it's a metaphysical manifested illness, metaphysical manifested mental illness. And to come back home to yourself is to combat that and to really stay firm. You know, I hope this helped. I would appreciate if you could pray for my family and I. And yeah, I don't want to go more in depth with this, but have a great day.